Yes, good morning. Thank you for everyone that is here. We would, at this point in time, we're just, because of the weather, I think there may be some delays in people arriving. So we're just going to give, we'll call it 10 more minutes, and then we can make a decision from there in terms of reaching quorum here today. Great. Marilyn, I just want to confirm that you're there. Your picture is on there. I just want to confirm that you can hear us right now. Great. Kirsten, can you hear us?
Yep, I can.
Beautiful. Thank you. That gives us quorum. Oh, and there's Marilyn. Excellent. Hey, Marilyn. Great. So we do have quorum, and that was conjured by here that we now have made it possible. So with that in mind, I'd like to call the meeting to order today let's call it 10:03. Look at that, only 3 minutes. Time is only a construct anyway, so okay. So first of all, I'd like to start with a recognition of the territories and thank the Péquot for allowing us to conduct our business here today on their unceded traditional territories. I would also like to notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. And as we are all here today in various parts, maybe we'll just do a round of introductions for those here today. And maybe, Veda, if we could start at your end of the table and we'll work our way around.
Good morning. I'm Veda Siga, Area C Director for Long Beach. Thanks.
Alicia Fazer, Airport Project Planner with the ACRD.
And Jenny Brunn, General Manager of Community Services with the ACRD.
Mark Fortune, Airport Manager with the ACRD.
Good morning, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
And Tom Steer, District of Tofino, appointed Director.
Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD. Over to you, Terry.
Terry Fong, Chief Financial Officer for the Regional District.
Maybe we'll go up to our Zooming audience there, and Marilyn, introduce yourself.
Good morning, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
And Kirsten, over to yourself.
Kirsten Johnson, Director for the Toquot Nation.
Great, thank you. So first, we could have a motion to approve our agenda today. Well, thank you, Director Vega. That was so wonderful. Seconded by Director McEwen. Oh, by Kirsten. Thank you there. Saw the hand go up. All those in favor, thank you. Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Wonderful. Everyone's engaged here. Has everyone had their coffee? That's the first thing I should check in with. So if I could also that then I'll move from the table that the minutes of the West Coast Committee meeting held on February 21, 2024 be adopted. Thank you. That's excellent. All those in favor? Motion carried. So today there's lots of excitement. We actually have a few delegations here today. So the first on our list here, Senior Project Manager Nick Walters from Avia NG Airport Consultants. And this will be regarding the Tofino Long Beach Airport Terminal building expansion.
Good morning, everyone, I guess, where you are. I'm also joined by Josh Horst, who's with Avia as well. So he's our Senior Aviation Planner and Practice Lead. So we've got a presentation for you. So I'm assuming it's best for me to share my screen as long as you guys have the ability to see it somewhere there. So I will share that and let me know when you guys can see it, and then we will get going with our presentation.
We've got it on our screen.
Perfect. So Josh, I will turn it over to you to start and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. First, to go to the next slide, we'll go through this agenda. I want to kick off the meeting here by just recapping what the main objective is. The presentation here is aimed at taking you through the study that Avia NG has completed on your behalf, which included a pre-design initial assessment related to the expansion of the existing terminal facility. So essentially our task there is to quantify the problem that exists, being a constrained facility, and propose a solution, being an expanded or new facility, as the case, aimed at rectifying that problem. With consideration to the challenges and opportunities that the airport lands provide, and with due consideration to the longer term needs for the facility. So that's when the forecast elements get into it. We'll start by recapping briefly, and I do recognize we have a limited amount of time, so we're going to go quite quickly through all the slides today. But we'll take a moment to recap the history and importance of the local context in our study. We'll briefly talk about the existing conditions, in particular from an airport planning and terminal planning perspective, what we found of particular relevance to the study with the objectives in mind. And then, as with any transportation facility planning study, we will get into the right sizing of that facility. So understanding what the demand will look like on the facility and sizing it appropriately. So we'll take you through our approach in that regard that has led to the the estimates of demand, and then how that translates into the facility requirements. So that's understanding the size of the facility that you need leads us to examining our site options. So it's not, our study has not just limited it to expanding on the existing site, but we have taken a larger look at other site options that are available to us, and some recommendations have come out from there. That will lead nicely then into the terminal concepts themselves, and then from that, the cost estimates associated with them, and lastly, a summary of our conclusions and recommendations. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Nick, to walk through the context.
So wanted to start to, of course, acknowledge that the Tofino Long Beach Airport is located on the unceded territory of the Tloquia First Nation. So it's been home to the nation for thousands of years. But more recently than that, the Long Beach Airport was established by the Royal Canadian Air Force during World War II and officially transferred to the ACRD in the year 2000. So a lot of what is left there is a result of what the Canadian Air Force had, and there are remnants of that original development that we need to consider as we're going through this. And it does provide a critical transportation route, as we've seen over the last year with construction on the main highway across the island, as well as the wildfires. So obviously a very, very critical piece of transportation infrastructure for the West Coast.
The existing conditions are quite important to this type of study. We needed to get an understanding of the land available to us, and then what aeronautical constraints or land development constraints would apply. Also of relevance here is the improvements that are in the works for facilities. In particular, as I'm sure you're aware, there are some improvements to the approaches that can be made at this airport that are imminent. Hope to see those implemented in the calendar year or slightly thereafter. NAV Canada has kind of their own schedule, but those improvements will help with resilience at this airport and marketably improve the usability of the facility, which should translate into airlines seeing essentially more reliability in their ability to serve the area. And that will translate into increased demand, as we do see some pent up demand, so to speak, with your facility in the near term. And then getting more focused, and you can skip to the next slide, recognizing time, is all about the apron and the area that we have to work with. So your current apron, this is the area where aircraft park and maneuver, on and off stand, we call it, the area parked where passengers enplane and deplane the aircraft. That apron today, although in good shape from a pavement condition perspective, is a constrained site from an obstacle clearance perspective, and certainly in accommodating larger aircraft or just generally aircraft alongside a busy general aviation day. So the site that we're working with for the existing terminal has several constraints, deficiencies, so to speak, that could be addressed or should be addressed alongside the terminal project to ensure that the apron area is not the bottleneck and will not stand in the way of a good level of service over the long term.
So the existing terminal building is about 3,000 square feet. It has difficulty servicing flights larger than about 30 passengers. So anytime there are stacked overlapping flights due to delays, these constraints are very felt. There's insufficient space for seating, vending, washrooms, a number of facilities. So it's suffice to say the space is constrained and doesn't meet the level of service that you would need from a typical airport of this size and service capacity. It also has challenges with the layouts, future expansion, as well as the existing building aesthetics lack both appropriate First Nations recognition, which I know is being worked on currently with a couple of projects being implemented, but the architecture itself isn't what some might call lovely. So for those of you familiar with the facility, the exterior is shown on the left there, and then that is basically the entire extent of the interior of the terminal building on the right. So that being said, when we're looking at terminal building sizing and planning, typically we'll do this on a peak hour. So what we might see in the future of a specific peak of aircraft that could be handled and what that passenger use translates into. So the peak that was developed and validated for the potential at the Long Beach Airport is about 115 passengers, shown as PAX there, which is based on overlapping Dash 8, 300 and 400 flights. So very reasonable and conservative estimate of what might happen once the instrument approach procedures are improved. And from that, we developed what's known as a functional program based on the IATA reference manual that look at appropriate level of service standards for terminal buildings. So what's shown to be required in the full build out is about 17,000 or 1,700 meters squared, and the current facility is about 285. So a very large discrepancy between what a peak level of service would look like and what's currently shown. There's also a phase 0 mentioned, and I'll talk about that a little bit, which is what would be recommended for an ideal level of service based on the currently scheduled flights and operating conditions.
Once we were equipped with an understanding of the size of the facility that we need, that we can then double back to, again, looking at the airport more broadly and looking at alternative sites. So as mentioned, the first site obviously is expanding or building on the existing ATB location. We've identified that as site 1. But as mentioned, there are some site constraints, apron layout issues that would have to be resolved, and some operational challenges to do with expanding or building a new facility next to an existing operating facility. We then looked elsewhere. Site 2, which is one we've carried forward as a recommended site, presented something nearby, but also more importantly, near sites, had great site servicing potential. Also that near access to the main airport road there. And because of the history of the site, that also lends itself to quite a nice flat area where this used to be I believe it was a soccer or football field years ago when this was operated by the military. So it grabbed our attention there. We didn't stop there though. We did look at previous studies dating back years where we've revisited site number 3, for example, over where the golf course is. That site is quite constrained and would have significant impact to the golf course current facility in order to develop in that location. And then site 4, which was also contemplated in years past, is a site that would correspondingly need significant infrastructure brought in and grading of that area to make it a viable site. It's also it has a potential servicing difficulty, and its placement does not have that nice connection to the parallel taxiway infrastructure. So that taxiways, Golf, Hotel, Foxtrot, Bravo, you wouldn't benefit from having that with that site 4 or site 3 for that matter, resulting in more runway crossings, which we don't like to have. It reduces the overall capacity of this facility. So that all kind of worked together to highlight that site 1 and 2 had the most potential, and we should focus on that for the remainder of the study.
So being cognizant of the time, and I know we're close to our time already, I'm going to be pretty quick through here, but if we want to go back in detail during questions, we'll have the ability to do that. So what we did was develop functional concepts for those sites 1 and 2. And those were based on 4 phases. So a build out of a phase 0 for the current passenger peak in operations, a build out to the target peak passenger that is shown there, but with non-secure flights. So no CATSA screening, a phase 1B, which is implementing CATSA screening, and then a conceptual expansion if we were to get larger beyond that peak passenger hour. So what we developed, and these I'll just flip through quickly, are block diagrams that show the flows of approximate size and scale of what each of these spaces would look like and how the facility would function. So I'm not going to walk through them in too much detail, but just showing as we go from phase 0 to phase 1A, that shows an expanded hold room that gives you more capacity to hold passengers and provide a greater level of service. Moving into phase 1B, we add in that red section there that allows for pre-board screening and secure flights, as well as baggage screening as required by CATSA. And then the phase 2 is an expansion out into the future for a larger site. So what this looks like on a site plan, and our recommended site is a greenfield at this site 2, which is a greenfield just to the east of the existing terminal building. So shown there is what would be the minimum size apron expansion and terminal building that would be recommended, along with a parking lot and access space. So this was done as a phase 0 to show the cost savings that are possible by phasing this in implementation. And then moving forward to if we were to move to the target build out size, as well as the target size of apron to expand. So a number of items added on there to provide the taxiway space, the apron, as well as the terminal size. And then for reference, 2 options shown here are at that existing terminal building site, which is known as site 1. So pretty substantial upgrades are required to get the size of apron needed for the aircraft stands and to provide the taxiway space in the back. And it's also important to note that for both this option 2 and option 3, which are shown here, these are not shown as phase build-out options because the ability to phase this construction would be very, very difficult. Operationally, putting the construction in these locations would have major impacts on the existing serviceability of the airport and the terminal building. So anytime that you're getting in there to do this work, it's best to do it all at once as opposed to phasing it because of how significant the impacts would be. Whereas with the previous options, you have the ability to do all of that construction without impacting current terminal operations, and then have the ability as well to take that existing terminal building and reuse it for sale as a fixed-based operator, an FBO, or any other use that the terminal may have. So then quickly, as we're wrapping up, the order of magnitude cost estimate shows what the differences look like between these different options. And the main thing to note here is between these different sites, whether you're using the greenfield site or expanding on the existing terminal building site, you're not seeing a significant savings by reusing the existing site or the existing building. So that's the 3 columns on the right, the phase 1A, the phase 2, or option 2 and option 3. All 3 of these come in around that $18 to $19 million mark for all of your building, site servicing, civil works, all in price. What you'll see on the left side there, the phase 0 does bring the price down as an initial investment to be able to get that initial level of service, but not limit yourselves to be able to expand in the future. So wrapping up quickly, and then we'll get to questions if there are any for us, is mainly the existing terminal building can't accommodate future projected passenger demands and barely accommodates what is existing in the demands that are needed, especially when there are cancellations or other overlap flights. And the terminal apron does not currently comply with the Transport Canada TP312 requirements under 4th edition. That terminal site 2 as a greenfield recommendation is strongly recommended because it provides maximum flexibility for expansion, initial budget savings, and uses for the other FBO. There is some further analysis that should be done. So environmental and geotechnical investigations, as well as a formal schematic design. And then the last point is kind of moved from the time that we developed this, because the RFP for the master plan for the airport is actually out right now. So that recommendation was obviously taken to heart and implemented immediately once we made it. So other than that, that is the end of the presentation. So Josh and I would be happy to answer any questions now or at any other time.
Yeah, we're happy to flip back to slides as needed.
Great. If you could maybe stop the screen share at this point, just so it's hard for me to see the screen and the other directors on there. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll look to the committee right now to see if there are questions. I suspect there may be 1 or 2. We do have a report coming up where your report was included in that, so there will definitely be a more fulsome discussion at that point in time. But if there is any maybe questions for clarity, this might be a good opportunity to consult. Data.
Thank you. I noticed on, I think it was page 34, where there's a mention of the recommended concrete is not included in the proposal. And I am concerned about just that comment alone because of where this is situated with high rainfalls and flooding, boggy territory. Perhaps through the chair, if I can ask, I think the existing runways are concrete, aren't they? And that, so I think that rather than even have in there that the concrete option is not included, I think we should just avoid that whole thing, because the pavement will wash away.
I don't know if there's any response from Nick or Josh there, and I would also maybe look to Mark as well, who may have some comment.
Yeah, I'd defer to Mark to answer about the current facility, but I believe the reference in the report is just concrete aircraft stands themselves. So what we'll do for aprons is, depending on the sizing of the aircraft, we'll either recommend asphalt or concrete. Concrete obviously comes with a little bit higher cost, but greater durability. And typically you'll do a concrete aircraft stand where you have larger aircraft that are there for a longer period of time. So if you had a 737 that was staying on stand overnight versus a Q400 or a smaller aircraft that's there for a quick turn, it's typically not required in the same way, but it's definitely something that we can build into a cost estimate and work into a schematic design so that that decision can be made as part of a design process and value engineering.
Yeah, I think we did recommend that consideration be given to the concrete pads, and I'm personally supportive of that. Especially where there's aircraft refueling, So one of the, whether you picked up on or not in the report, I don't blame you if you don't, but with increased activity, the likelihood of this airport remaining just a fixed location for refueling, as is currently at the tanks, is unlikely, and it would move to a Bowser type system where a truck would drive around to refuel the aircraft. Refueling aircraft on an apron, we recommend concrete, small concrete pads where the aircraft actually sits, because that Jet A fuel can eat away at the asphalt when it drips and falls onto the asphalt. So it is a strong recommendation.
Again, I'd rather that not be a recommendation. I would rather it be built right into the proposal, because we're talking sensitive environment, adjacent to the park. There's just so many reasons why it should be part of it, not just a recommendation.
Absolutely. And you fuel water oil separator systems as well to intercept any sort of drips or spills. Yeah, that would form part of detailed design. Noted.
Great. I'll look to the rest of the committee if there's any questions maybe for clarity to Josh and Nick. Seeing none on the screen, and I'd like to welcome Lamana. I see that your picture popped up on the screen. Thank you for getting in to the committee meeting today. If no other questions, I'm going to save some of my comments, I think, for the report. I don't know if you're sticking around for that. Most of them are around the money end of this conversation. So I really do appreciate the report. It was fascinating in many ways. I think the one comment I will make at this time is that in meetings with some of the constituents in the District of Tofino, our new executive director at the Chamber of Commerce, as well as some of the major tourism operators in our region, they are very much supportive of this. They recognize the value of it for this particular part of our economy. It's also been recognized through the events of last summer with the fire and the unpredictability of that road, that we have absolutely know that this is a critical piece of infrastructure from an emergency management perspective. So thank you for the report. And if you're not sticking around, thank you for coming, and we'll talk to you soon.
Happy to stick around if you'd like us to stay or myself to stay. I can just listen in and answer any questions if needed, but otherwise we're happy to excuse ourselves as well.
Well, that would be great if you can, because it's coming up very soon. We have two more delegations, and then I think the airport, yes, is the first one on that. So that would be great if you could. Thank you.
Not a problem. I'll stay on the line. I think Josh potentially has to run to another meeting, but I'll be in the background. If you have any questions, I'll listen in and chime in as needed.
Great, thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Super. So moving on then with the next, we have another presentation here. Senior Transportation Planner and Transit Lead, Shilpa Paniker from Watt Consulting. There you are. Good to see you again. I think it's going to be regarding the update on the West Coast Transit implementation here today.
Morning, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me here today. This is an exciting time for us, where today is the 28th of February. It would have been the last day of February, other than it being a leap year, and we're about a month away from transit services starting off in Tofino. So I'm here to provide an update on where we're at with the process, the implementation process. I have a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to share. Please let me know if you do not see it. I just want to let you know this presentation was also part of your agenda package. There are just some minor details that are different from what's in your agenda packet. We were kind of finalizing the bus stop locations. We were in the process of doing that, haven't finalized it when I sent out the presentation. And so you'll see some variations here. Sharing screen. Can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Right now, we just have a black. Oh, there it is. Just popped up.
Wonderful. So I'm going to quickly go through system details, final routing, final schedule. We've talked through that. Some discussion on bus stops and signage and technology and implementation dates. So we were originally supposed to have started on the 1st of April. on the 1st of April. Turns out 1st of April is a start. And so service starts April 02. We have confirmation that the buses are going to arrive so that we are actually able to start service on the 2nd of April. The contract has been signed. The last time I presented to the committee, the contract was still in negotiation. It's been signed now. The operator is Pacific Western Transportation. The service name for the service is West Coast Transit Service. Kept it simple in the event that BC Transit comes and takes on the service at some later date. The vehicle capacity is 18 seats with space for wheelchair and mobility device. Because this is starting on the 2nd of April, the operator at this point has brought in temporary vehicles. The new vehicles will be here in about a year or so. And this is a universal problem that's happening with all buses. Getting new buses is taking a really long time, but at this point we'll have an RBOC. All three vehicles will be RBOCs as an interim solution till the new vehicles are purchased. We've talked about the routing before. Nothing has changed. Minor changes in Ucluelet in terms of just the stops, and some minor changes as far as stops are concerned in Tofino. But generally speaking, routing is not changing at all from what has been discussed, what has been presented to at engagement as well. So no changes there. Final schedule from the last meeting, nothing has changed. You have 7 round trips Monday to Friday and 4 round trips Saturday and Sunday. Annual cost as well as cost per hour, annual hours, all of that remains the same. Bus stops. So what we did is we, I believe Eddie went out and had actually ran the route, had discussions with MOTI as well. And what we decided was originally this was about 40 bus stops, and there were more stops in between the existing transit Tofino shuttle stops. And so to avoid confusion among customers in terms of like, is this transit Tofino shuttle stop? Is this a regional transit stop? What we decided was that in Tofino, we would go with all the stops that are currently being used. And if there is a need to add bus stops at a later point, we can definitely do that. So to start with, we are going to be using all the Tofino shuttle stops in Tofino. So the number of stops that we are proposing has come down from 40 to 33. There's still 5 stops in the district of Ucluelet. There's 20 stops in the district of Tofino. I believe that was much higher before. 2 stops in Taistanis and Esta Vista, 3 stops in Hitatsu, 1 stop at the Highway 4 junction, which is the visitor center. The bus is basically going to pull into the visitor center and then get back on track. And then on the way back into Ucluelet as well, it's going to pull into the visitor center and then get back on track to head to Ucluelet. And then 2 stops in the national park. And this has been discussed with Parks Canada. They have approved the location of the stops. And so generally speaking, at this point, we've had conversations with Parks Canada, MOTI, Tofino, as well as with Ucluelet in terms of like where the stops are located, and largely finalized. Tomorrow I'm having a meeting with the district of Ucluelet to finalize the stops in Ucluelet. And then I believe Eddie's coming back next week, and we'll be having discussions with the First Nation communities as far as their stops are concerned, if there's anything that needs to change. There's only 3 stops in Hitatsu that really need discussion. We don't anticipate any changes there, but we will have that discussion once Eddie's back. The stops in Taistanis and Esta Vista are existing stops, and we don't see any issues with those existing stops. So that is the status of stops. As far as bus stops are concerned, we're basically trying to use what would potentially end up being BC Transit stops. And so the exact length and width of the stop and what that's going to be. And so we at this point are going to have what they call posts with the stop signage, bus stop sign on there. And so it's strip signs essentially that will be at every single stop, letting folks know that this is a bus stop. where we share stops with Tofino Transit or with the Tofino Shuttle. We'll basically use the Tofino shuttle stop, and there's the ability for us to put on a horizontal sticker that then identifies that this is a shared bus stop between the Tofino Shuttle as well as this regional service. So as far as work remaining is concerned, all of these I have kind of striped through just because we've now completed all of this work. This is the stop signage that is going to be used for the regional service. We've kept the logo very, very simple. We basically use the ACRD logo because this is a regional service. And at this point, we didn't want to get involved in creating a separate logo for the service till such time that a more formal service comes into play. And so if the sticker needs to be horizontal, this is what the logo would look like, or the sticker would look like. And on your strip signs, this is essentially what you would see. So it's pretty different from the existing Tofino Shuttle signage and logo, and so easily distinguished between the two, or distinguishable. As far as technology is concerned, we're trying to be as forward-thinking with technology on the service. The service is going to be cashless. The ability to use an app called Token Transit is going to be possible for anybody that has a phone. For people that do not have a phone, they would go online and they would print QR codes, and they would have paper QR codes with them that they would bring to the bus if they needed to. There's going to be validators on the bus. On day one, the validators are not going to be on the bus because it takes some time between when the contract got signed to when the validators can actually be installed on the buses. It's about an 8-week lag. And so in that 8-week time period, the drivers are basically going to be validating your pass when you get on the bus. And so essentially what it is if you've got an app and then you download a bus pass, it's going to show up on your phone, and you're basically going to show your phone to the bus driver. The bus driver is going to look at it, validate it, and let the person go in, essentially, is what's going to happen. If you've got a QR code, it's going to be the same thing. The QR code will have the date and time for when that pass is valid. The bus driver looks at it and lets the person on. If you've got a validator, which is basically a device that you can scan your phone against or your paper QR code against, you're essentially getting on the bus, scanning your phone, and then finding a seat for yourself. Similarly with a QR code. So in those first 8 weeks, we see the drivers having a little more, I guess, interaction with the riders. But then towards the end, after the validators on the bus, that should not be required. And the drivers will be trained for this particular interaction and what to look out for. The Token Transit app, we did speak to a few different apps, and we found that the Token Transit app was the most applicable for Tofino, given that group tickets are able to be bought. And so we're thinking about application for First Nation communities, application for resorts if they want to be buying bulk tickets for their employees. And so overall, Token Transit seemed to meet the requirements of the regional service. So that's technology. Something more with technology is we're trying to see if we can also provide the schedule on this thing called Transit app, also another app on a phone. But essentially what will happen is if we provide Transit app with the information of the schedule and the route for this regional service, then anybody can pull up the service on Transit app and essentially see where the bus is, what time the next trip is. And so it makes it easy for them, especially in conditions where it's raining or it's dark outside. You don't want to be spending, a long time waiting for the bus. This makes it easy because then you can see where the bus is and then get to the bus stop maybe, 5 minutes before the bus gets there. And then PWT, the operating company as well, had some technology on the vehicle to be able to track the vehicle. We're trying to see if Transit app and this technology can talk to each other. And so we're kind of in the process of ensuring that what technology is on the bus is the most efficient and not having too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. And so those things are being ironed out over the next few weeks. We're going to be meeting every week just to make sure that everything, all these outstanding issues get addressed. The next one, as we move towards implementation, we're definitely cognizant of the fact that there has not been transit service on the West Coast. And so we're coming up with materials for bus rider education. What do you do when you get on the bus? What are some things that you do and you don't do on the bus? And so all of this information is going to be part of our website. Also materials that will be distributed to the general public. And so we're having a meeting on the 5th of March, I believe, with the working group for the transit service. And so we'll discuss marketing strategies, how do we spread the message, what is the most effective things to be talking about in terms of the service. And so based on that discussion, we'll tailor our marketing materials so that the most informative bites of information are sent out to the public. Like in earnest, marketing efforts will start about 2 weeks ahead of implementation date. And so 2 weeks ahead of April 2nd is when we would like to start the marketing. Anything earlier would essentially be one of the situations where people generally forget. And so 2 weeks is the optimum time frame. And then on the day of service, as well as the next day, we'll have street teams out, just so that if people have questions, we're around to answer those questions for them. With that, I have a next step slide. Over the next 4 weeks, we're tying up loose ends, final transit schedule documents, technology agreements, hiring, training, transit staff. As I mentioned, marketing starts 2 weeks ahead of the implementation date, and implementation date is April 2nd, 2024. With that, I know I was really quick. I'm happy to go back to any of the slides you'd like me to, but I'm happy to answer questions for you as well. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Great, thank you, Shilpa. Yeah, great screen share. I'll open up right now. Thank you for the presentation, by the way, and the information there. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of questions, or I can already see Veda. She got her hand up. Excellent, glad to see. I'll close behind you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't see a bus stop at Millstream. Like it looks like it's Ucluelet, and then the next stop is the junction, which leaves a distance of like 5 miles for residents who live in between to walk. So it's not going to be used. I can guarantee the cars will continue to be used.
I believe there was a stop at Millstream. I don't know if we took it out because there isn't an existing Tofino shuttle stop. I will look into that.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure there is. I was just checking with staff here just quickly, but
it just isn't on the map that she showed. And then the other obvious stop is just where Port Albion Road hits the highway, because then people can walk the other way down the hill.
So the first map has only the timing points, and so it would have just the stops where that are published on the schedule. It would not have the entire list of stops. I do believe Millstream is on there, but I will confirm.
Thank you.
I'll look up to those zooming in. There's no questions or comment.
Well, close the door.
Well, I will close the door then. Great. I do have a couple of comments and maybe a couple of questions. I right off the top, I a little bit of concerns around the fares and the cashless service that's going to be there. I do feel that there's going to be some issues around that. My hope was that we would make the ability in this initial stages as many opportunities to engage, and so payment is going to be a tricky one. I can tell you personally, using phones and QR codes for a certain segment of the population it would not be applicable, and certainly with some may potentially our seniors and other user groups. So I do have concerns around there, having about the information being collected was another one in terms of the app, which I think is great to be able to broadcast those schedules. I was wondering the one question around signage on those signs. As you were talking about the ones in Tofino that will be coexist with the shuttle service. Will the schedule be printed on that signage? I could see on there, but I didn't see any indication of a schedule printed on those signs.
So, Chair, the slide I had basically just showed what the logo and what that bus stop sign is going to look like. The idea is to be able to print the schedule on all of the stops if there is the possibility of doing that. With the Tofino shuttle stops, the ones that we're sharing with Tofino shuttle, we're having a meeting with them to talk about how much space is available and if it's possible for us to put the stops, the schedule on that stop as well. So there, I know for the Tofino shuttle stops, they have the existing Tofino shuttle schedules on there. We just want to make sure that there isn't confusion between the Tofino shuttle schedule and the regional service schedule. And so those are the only areas where we're a little concerned about how much space is available for us to put schedules, as well as whether we are able to put them and if there's space for it. On the rest of the signs, we should not have the posts. We should not have a problem putting up schedules.
Great, thank you. And then just a point around once again the data gathering, and there were some audio issues for me. So in terms of validators and collecting the information, I think it's going to be very important for us to have very accurate data moving forward in our hopefully further conversations with BC Transit moving down the road here, pun intended, by the way. There will be some important pieces of information that we'll need to gather around that. So I want to make sure that that is critically brought forward to you. And then there was one last piece, and it was around rider education. And one of the things that you did point out, and I agree 100%, we're not used to public transportation out on the West Coast, specifically in terms of our between our communities. So I am looking forward to a very robust rider education. And I look to our recycling and three-stream system here in the ACRD and specifically on the West Coast. I think the key to the success of that program was the education that went behind it, not only in the immediacy of it, but the continued education process throughout. So I would highly stress I think it's March 5th, you say you're having that those ideas come to the forefront and that there is an implementation plan that is also associated with that education program. So I'll leave it there. And once again, thank you very much for the presentation and the updates. And we're very much looking forward to, I'm glad you said April 2nd, because if you would have said April 1st, then I would have had some questions around if this was a joke or not. But so great. Thank you so much. And I'll look to the rest of the committee in case there was, oh, Marilyn, your hand is actually, I can't even see it from my angle. So go ahead, please, Marilyn.
Thank you. I'm just wondering what the fare is for the bus ride.
Mayor, we are going to have a discussion with the working group as far as the fares are concerned. This is a regional service and the fare is a little higher than a $2.50 fare, but the final fares, I think, will be decided once we've had our discussions with the working group. Unfortunately, we were not able to schedule a working group meeting ahead of this meeting, and so it's happening after. Or we can definitely come back and inform the committee about what's been decided by the working group as far as fares are concerned.
Okay, so you're thinking somewhere around the $2.50 mark?
It would be higher than that, given that it's a regional service. I think the original idea that BC Transit had put forward was $2.50. And this being a regional service, we feel that the fare should be slightly higher, given that the distance traveled between Tofino and Ucluelet is quite long compared to what the Tofino shuttle as well is doing at this point. And so we have a potential structure in place, but like I mentioned, once we have those discussions with the working group, and I guess once we finalize those fares, we'll come back to you and let you know about the confirm the fare structure.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate Shilpa not, defining what that fare is, but I will share with the committee that we are thinking about $5.50. And what we've done is we've looked at other comparative regional services. I was just down in Key West, and they also have a regional service, and it's $4 American, and you get to travel for quite a distance. Because when you look at sort of the length of time that you can travel, and especially for tourists who are usually going to be paying the one-time fare fee, that is an extremely affordable fare for that. Now, the monthly fees and fares would be discounted significantly. And then that's going to be focused on your residential users, right? Because the majority of those who are using the bus will be frequent bus users and will be selecting either day passes or monthly passes. So then we're looking at much more affordable discounted rates. So we're sort of looking at what that looks like. We're curious to see. And then if we're looking at potentially student senior discounts as well, because we want to make sure, again, that the transit service, for our tourists and visitors, we need them to pay a reasonable cost, right, to cover the cost of the service. But for our residents, this is more of a service that we want them to use because they need the service. So we're sort of looking at that in the way that we're structuring the fares. And as Shilpa mentioned, we hope by next week to have that meeting with the working group and get their input and thoughts on what those rates exactly should be.
Great, thank you, Jen. And I do believe there was can't remember which meeting. There's so many. There was a motion around that I brought to the table around those youth passes, which would certainly in that conversation with the working group comes to the forefront, and that will be incorporated in that rate schedule or the fare schedule. So.
Yeah. Just to add that with the agreement on the use of technology, we're also contemplating the potential of selling tickets through the co-ops. So if people want something paper, your QR code or your scan code would be on paper. And even though we have an agreement for the use of technology, that agreement lends itself to that option as well. So it's not to say that everyone will be forced to technology. We prefer, but where there are alternatives, we can still explore and advance those. So I think we'll be feeling our way across that as we launch, and depending on the feedback, we can always introduce a different format. Ideally, it would be sold through the co-ops because it's on both sides of the communities.
Great, yeah, thank you. And my concern, of course, is we want as much participation as we can, so as many ways to participate in the service. So thank you for that. I see Dan's up on the screen there. If there's no from the committee, Dan, would you mind if I took a 1-minute break here because I got to go to the bathroom really badly?
Of course.
Thank you. We'll just give a 1-minute recess here, minute and 30 seconds probably. So thanks, Dan. I'll be right back. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. Next on our agenda here is our lease applicant, Dan Harrison, regarding his lease application at the Long Beach Airport. Hey, Dan.
Hey, how's it going, Tom?
Good, man.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thank you, members of the committee. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. This delegation is a bit more of a hopefully discussion about some clarity around a non-airside lease at the airport. So just a little background. I'm a longtime 24-year resident of Tofino. I live and have a house in Tofino. I have a small family. I operate a small carpentry woodworking business. I'm the sole operator of it and no employees. I'm a small scale operation. Tom, as you know, Tofino is definitely fairly priced out for industrial commercial uses up Industrial Way for a small scale operator. And for that reason, I'm really hoping I can find something that could work at the Long Beach Airport. I've met with Mark a couple times, and he's been super helpful at sharing some of what's available at the airport. It seems mostly it's fairly undeveloped raw land, land that has been contaminated and for a long-term lease would need some sort of remediation. And so for that reason, only 3-year leases are being offered, which is a bit of a challenging thing to invest in a 3-year lease. But in talking with Mark, it sounds to me that there's never been a lease that hasn't been renewed as long as people keep within their lease agreement. So the situation is I'm hoping I put a lease application in to set up a small workshop and a sawmill next to the BC Parks office. And it's a site that is partially cleared. There's no power, there's no water, there's a bit of road access, but needs to be improved. I mean, the site would need well over $100,000 of investment to set it up as even a very meager workshop and a place for me to run my business. But once I submitted my application, I received an email from Alicia, and she was saying that there's going to be an updated land use plan in 2024-25 to set a vision for the future of the airport. And so that there's no guarantee that my lease would be honored beyond 3 years or renewed. And for me, that's a bit of a challenging proposition in that if I were to invest over $100,000 of my personal savings to set up a workshop for my small business, that's pretty shaky underpinning to say, well, there's not much of there's no real guarantee that we can honor that. So, I mean, the way I'm thinking about it is I'm really prepared to make an investment in the airport. I understand you guys have a lot on your plate. I'm aware of that now, looking at you have your airport expansion, you have a lot of things, and obviously the air side is the focus of the airport, but there's a lot of undeveloped land and potential for revenue for the airport. I mean, you guys have a pretty big price tag on that expansion. So I guess I'm just trying to start a conversation around is there really a big goal to grow the investment in non-airside leases, and then for us leaseholders that are really interested in investing in the airport, is there some sort of security in our investment so we're not just putting a bunch of money in and then 3 years later we lose it all, or at least have that shaky underpinning to it. So I'm just trying to get a bit of clarity around that, and I'm wondering if I can get some feedback from anyone in the room just to help me make those decisions.
Great, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that, and I'll look to Jenny right now. I may have a few comments in terms of the long-term vision. That your timing is such that we're engaging in that process. We're also engaged in a process with Chilliwack First Nations in terms of an MOU that we have with them in terms of those conversations around airport land. what we're looking to do with that plan is to provide that long-term security potentially for leaseholders in those areas. But we have a lot of work to do before we get there. So I'll maybe let Jenny comment, maybe hopefully give you a little clarification.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Dan, for coming and doing the delegation. And we appreciate your application, and this new process that we've set up is sort of intended to help yourself and ourselves work through this process exactly. So you're right, we do have a lot of undeveloped lands, and the pressure that we've been getting at the airport has been growing over the last number of years because it has a lot of different potential opportunities. And so we know that we need to do a land use plan to figure out exactly what that looks like. One of the reasons that Alicia did highlight this to you and make sure that you were very clear and understood this is that we don't know the outcome of what the land use plan will be. The process is going to be engaging with in partnership with Tilapia First Nation, engaging with the community and really understanding what it is. So as the regional district, we are stewards of the land, and we are there to develop a plan that makes sense and achieves the vision of the community. Because we haven't done that engagement, we don't know what that looks like. It is very clear that airside activities will and are mandatory to be at the airport. So when we're receiving applications, until we get the land use plan in place, we can approve longer terms and look at longer term leases for air-related activities. What you're proposing, we're just not sure what the land use plan will say about forestry manufacturing and if that is what the community wants to see at the airport and the use of those lands. So right now, we definitely don't want to prohibit people from leasing the land in the short term, but we cannot guarantee longer term leases. And that is the line that we've been giving to everyone. So there's a number of new leases that have been established. Most of them have not invested significant amounts of capital, and they have like CCANs or temporary buildings because of the risk that it would be to them to invest in something that they have no guarantee for. One of the options that you could consider is just putting a pause on your application, and then we can pick it up once the land use plan has been completed. At this point, we're thinking it'll be 2 years probably before we get completion of that. But until I think we have a land use plan that is adopted, we wouldn't be looking to engage in a lease any longer than 3 years until we knew that this was going to conform with that land use plan. I think that's, and I don't know if there's an interest for yourself in doing anything that was a temporary operation that didn't have a significant investment. And again, that's just controlling your risk and potential, loss if the land use plan came back and said, no, this isn't an allowable use, and then we wouldn't be able to renew your lease. So those are some things to consider for sure.
Great, thank you, Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, is there anything you wanted to add, or?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering if there would be in the land use plan, for example, if there's going to be discussion about what potential operations could exist there, would there be sort of maybe a prioritizing of those who are already there to, if for example, a certain area that maybe I'm set up in, if I decide to go through with this lease, if they say, well, maybe this type of operation isn't ideal here, but we would like to move it over here to a different location at the airport, would there be a priority to, maintain a lease, but maybe transfer sites? I'm just trying to think about exactly what you're just talking about with, CCANs and things that maybe have a bit more portability. But I mean, if I want to try and invest in the airport, will the airport invest in me in that way and honor that I'm trying to make it work there? And could there be like a prioritizing of existing leaseholders?
I'll look to maybe if Jenny, if you wanted to respond to that, and then I'll get to, unless you had a comment directly related to that or question.
I think it's hard to say at this point because it's really early. However, just in practical logistical sense, when we have our short-term leaseholders set up there, as long as they are within the allowable land use zoning, they would not need to be moved. But in the development of the plan, if we identify that a certain location isn't good for certain types, or if we have certain areas that were designated, then there would have to be a shift because basically if we're dividing up the airport lands and saying this section is good for this section is good for that, then if there isn't conformance with the land use plan, we would have you move. In the development of the plan, we'd definitely be considering the existing leases that are there. But again, I don't want to make any guarantees for you, because I don't want, I really don't want the regional district to make promises that we can't go on. So we want to be pretty clear on what the limitations are for you on this lease.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Dan, I would really strongly encourage you to go to the OCP meetings for Long Beach. And the reason I'm thinking that is there have been forestry lands adjacent to the park that have been sold that would be probably more ideal for your purposes. There is logging road access. It's really not good for agricultural use, and I would think that the owners of those properties would be looking for possibly doing a lease like that would suit you better. And these
Are you talking? Go ahead. I couldn't hear the end. Sorry.
Come out to the OCP meetings. There's forestry land that has been sold that would probably meet your needs better.
Okay, thank you. Is that like the NCOM lands or MCOM land, NCorp, or what is the one across from the old ESOC mill? Is that the land you're referring to?
If you go out Dump Road turnoff,
Yeah.
right or left, all of those lands have been sold that are adjacent to the park.
Right.
Fine, whatever, it's done.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think more what I'm looking for is like a workshop that with a bit more security. And I guess that's part of wanting to be at the airport, is that there are other people there. If I have a workshop out on the back roads and I can't live on site, I mean, if I have a bunch of woodworking tools and all my equipment in there, then it becomes a bit of a risk. So that part of wanting to be at the airport is that there is something going on there. Also, if there's an encouragement for more businesses of the same, then you get a bit of a business community out there that look out for each other, and it actually help each other out. So that's kind of what I'm hoping, is that there is a vision for non-airside development or leases anyways, that you can encourage a bit more of that to happen out there. That's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted the airport. I don't want to start a large scale mill. I have a small sawmill for my woodworking business, but I just needed a bit more of an industrial space, and that's the reason why the airport does seem to make maybe a bit more sense, other than the back roads by the dump there.
There are buildings being put on these properties.
Oh, there are. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that update. Okay, thank you. I appreciate being able to talk and to bring this forward, and I appreciate your time. So thank you for this.
Thanks, Dan. And just a quick comment, your lease application is coming up onto the agenda. And there was potential I suspect you don't want us to remove this from the agenda at this point in time. We'll keep it on there and proceed as we have on our agenda.
Yes, that'd be great. I'd like to still continue with the process. I need to really figure out how I go about that now, just understanding where we're at with this. I guess the only other question I might have is if there's any understanding in the room if some of the lands that are at the airport are under potential land use agreements with in treaty. Like, are there parts of the airport that have been slated to be potentially given away in land use that might be some of the land that we're talking about?
Good question. And no, we have no specific information on that, but this is on the unceded territory of the Tilloquia First Nation.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you coming out here today and giving us an explanation of what your needs might be out there and some of the concerns that you have. And I think, as was pointed out, the long-term vision, we really want to get that dialed in. And so that's why we're being extremely transparent with you in terms of not being able to make those guarantees at this point in time. So I personally, of course, love the operation and the idea of what you have going there. But in terms of our longer use plan, we have a lot of work still to do there before we give any quote guarantees on how we'll use those lands out there.
Yep.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, bye.
So next on the agenda, we have no correspondence, so we can move in. We have several requests for decisions here today, and starting with the Long Beach Airport Terminal Building Expansion Plan. And I'm looking across the room here. I suspect you may have something to say about this.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So this report is regarding the terminal building expansion plan. As Nick and Josh from Avia already discussed, we had a pre-design initial assessment completed for a new terminal building at the airport. And as they discussed as well, our current terminal building is over capacity for the number of passengers that come through, and it's only predicted to grow. So through this study, it was found that it would cost a substantial amount to build a new terminal building that would meet capacity needs. And so through discussions with staff and Avia, we believe that taking the next step in the project of doing a detailed design of a new terminal building would help increase possibilities of receiving funding to build a new terminal building. So staff are seeking support from the committee to pursue funding for this next phase of the project, as well as to incorporate design of the terminal building into the 2024-2028 work plan.
Great, thank you. I'll look to the committee to see if there's any questions at this point. I got one or two here. Great. So thank you. Appreciate that. And once again, I'll just reiterate the fact that it's been clearly brought to our attention about the potential expansion out there in terms of service. And I know that there is support on the north end of the peninsula there for that idea. Of course, the big idea comes around the cost and the feasibility of that. As we know, it is an expensive operation to carry out on the coast, and within the report, it has been clearly indicated as very much grant related. So I just want to make that clear to everybody that that's going to be a key critical component. So I think when part of the recommendation is to seek out grant funding opportunities, I think everyone will be highly supportive of that. And so I thank you for the work on this, and I'll look to the board to if they would like, if with no other further questions, if they'd like to read the recommendation. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. I'd like to move that the West Coast Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors support the recommendation of the Avia NG report on Long Beach Airport Terminal Building Expansion Phase 1, pre-design initial assessment, and direct staff to incorporate the design of a new terminal building into the 2024-2028 work plan.
Thank you, Marilyn, for seconding.
I'll second.
There's no further questions or comments. I'll call all those in favor. Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Great. And if you'd like to finish off the second part of that motion.
We're getting lazy because in Tofino we didn't have to push the button. I'd like to move that the West Coast Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to seek out grant funding opportunities for design of the new terminal building.
I'll second.
Seconded, Director. Thank you. And thank you so much. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. I was told that I'm really good at pushing buttons. So anyways, I should get used to this. So thank you. And moving forward, the next request for decision is going to be regarding West Coast Transit Service.
Sorry, I'm deep in writing reports. Yeah, so the West Coast Transit Service, we did discuss it and we had the presentation today. It is a large tax requisition increase, obviously, as it is the implementation year. And so, it will go up again next year, as this is a service anticipated to start at the beginning of April. So just looking for if the board has any questions, or if not, then looking to include it in the first reading of the financial plan.
Great. Thank you, Terry. And I'll look to the data. Go ahead.
I'm excited to put this one forward, that the West Coast Committee recommend that the West Coast Transit proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of 2024-2028 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
I'll second.
Thank you, Director McKenna. I do have a comment before I call the vote. I feel it is my obligation. There's just two comments. The first, just on the fees and charges aspect on the plan at $35,000. I do feel that might be optimistic, but that I now recognize that is only for a shortened period of time, but just something to be considered. And then I do have to comment, and I apologize, Terry, because you've heard this several times, that you know, the distribution of the costs for this particular service, of which I'm 100% supportive, of course, but it is, when we look at those distribution costs, it is, for lack of a better description, somewhat disproportionate in terms of the same service that's being available to us, and the proportion is exceedingly higher at the north end of the peninsula. And so I do have to bring that up, and we have talked about ways of making it more equitable, but the only models that we have available to us are such that we have to go with what we have. And I know certainly with the population and assessment and being able to do the 50-50 there, we have talked about if there is any other possible models out there to make it look a little more equitable in terms of how we distribute those costs on a regional basis. So I don't know if you have a comment on that. You've heard me say it many times. So, you are smiling, so I'll make you have a comment.
It's fine, yeah. Just a reminder that the majority of our services and the property tax model, basically in BC, including at regional districts, is on the value of property value tax. So in this service, we did get a little bit creative, which we haven't done all that often at the ACRD, and we do have the apportionment method to be 50% population and 50% land and improvements. So it is a step, especially as we discuss new services potentially coming online over the coming years. It is definitely a discussion point. And then just a reminder that if we were ever to want to change the apportionment method, we would have to open up the establishing bylaw. And there's lots of rules involved in that, including 2/3 of the directors need to approve it. There's an inspector of municipalities approval, but we can get creative with apportionment methods. Some of them are harder to administer than others, obviously. And at the end of the day, once the shares by community are determined, it is getting transferred to your residents on the value of property values. So it is the higher and assessed values that are paying the bulk of it. So there is no mechanism to tax people at the end of the day. So, thanks.
Thank you, Terry, and I do appreciate the explanation for everyone, and really appreciate the work that goes into making it a little more equitable, so it is not lost. With that said, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Next on our agenda, we have another one coming up. Let me just make sure I got the right one. There's West Coast Transit Service. Now we're on to a preliminary lease application, and is this one supports preliminary lease? Oh, this is for PW Transit for that particular one, the LBA lease 2024. Looking up over there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, so this next report is a preliminary lease application submitted by the ACRD for purposes of providing space for the new West Coast Transit operations. The ACRD is proposing a groundside lease lot on Airport Road, which will be used to store 3 buses and a C-can. The main activities that will take place will be bus inspections and bus parking. And PW Transit services are beginning April 2nd. I just had it April 1st, but I changed it after the presentation. So staff are seeking support from the committee on this application.
Great, thank you. I'll look to the committee if there are any questions. Dana, go ahead.
Will maintenance on the vehicles be done on this property?
No, they'll be happening off-site. Not exactly sure where, but maintenance of the buses won't be happening there.
Great. And since you're there, do you want to read the recommendation?
I think that the West Coast Committee support the preliminary lease application. Hang on, is that right? Lease application from the ACRD for PW Transit operations, and recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors consider approval of the final application.
and seconded. Thank you, Director. June, all those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Next up on the list, we have the next lease application, and that's LBA lease 2023-0005 Harrison. Is there any questions? I might just read it out from the chair. I think we've gone into a bit of detail on this one. That the West Coast Committee supports the preliminary lease application LBA lease 2023-0005 from Dan Harrison and recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors consider approval for final application. Seconded. No, seconded Director McCune. All those in favor? And opposed? One opposed, motion carried. Moving next, we have
I just don't think that it's in his interest or the interest of the planning of the airport to have this sort of thing hanging. Sorry, it's not that I'm against any local business. I just don't think that it's fair to either party to.
great, thank you. Yeah, and that of course we can't think for Dan and allow him to go ahead with what he sees as fit. So, but thank you for the comment, and I do appreciate it. Moving up on the next lease application, it's LBA lease 2023-006 Mako.
Okay, so this report is also regarding a preliminary lease application that was submitted by Mako Noel, owner and operator of Ozard Environmental. He is proposing a groundside lease lot at the airport for processing recycled material, storage of equipment, and to operate a gravel mart. And again, similar to Dan's, because we don't have an updated land use plan, staff are recommending a 3-year term lease to begin, as we don't know if these uses will be favorable in the future. But staff are still seeking support from the committee on this application.
Great, thank you. I looked at the committee because I have just one quick question. Looked at the committee. If there's any questions, yeah.
Again, I go back to are vehicles going to be repaired and stored on lake? Is there a potential for contamination through these uses?
I believe from the preliminary discussions, that's not the intention, but in the formal process, we'll make sure we're clarifying that because we do dig into the environmental component when we do the formal. But excellent point and question.
Great, thank you, Data. Appreciate that lens on there. I'll look up to the rest of the committee. I had a question. Gravel mart. I make an assumption. I think a Walmart, a gravel mart. I suspected that it would be for the distribution of gravel and gravel associated products, but maybe there is some clarity that I may have missed on that.
You are correct. If you've ever been to go pick up compost or amendments or some gravel for your yard, usually it's you go to a large area and there's different piles, and that is what is generally referred to as a gravel mart.
Great, thank you. I go up to the Gibson here quite regularly. I'm going to say I'm now visiting the Gibson gravel mart. So thank you for that clarification. Any other, so with that being said, if somebody would like to read the Beta.
Thank you again. Okay, so let me see. That the West Coast Committee supports the preliminary lease application LBA lease 2023-006 from Mako Noel and recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors consider approval of final application.
I'll second.
Thank you, Marilyn. Call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Next on our list, we have a preliminary lease application, LBA lease 2024-001. I'm going to guess that's Tyone. I'm not sure who will be speaking to this one.
Okay, so this one's also a preliminary lease application that was submitted by Jamie Plume. She is proposing an airside lease lot on the newly developed Hurricane Road to locate a helicopter hangar, office unit, and caretaker suite. The proposed uses are air-related, which serve as a core function of the airport, and will be a key component in the future land use plan. So in this case, staff are recommending a long-term lease of 10 years and are seeking support from the committee on this application.
Great, I'll look to Beta.
I have a question about the housing. My greatest fear for the airport is that we are going to start having Airbnbs and like tourist rentals, and that is going to become a security problem that I don't think we want to. So I think we need to be very clear that if this housing is built, it is not a rental. Sorry.
Great, that's it. Yeah.
So typically on more remote locations like the airport, we'll allow for a single suite. And it's a caretaker, like it seems to be a caretaker suite that is more often seen as that extra security versus an Airbnb. So it'd be quite the contrary. And the hope is that it helps enhance security at the site as opposed to creating security issues such as an Airbnb. So that, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but typically these sites, you'll also see them in more industrial areas where we'll allow a caretaker suite so that they can actually have staff on site to add that extra degree of security.
Can it be written into the lease agreement that should any anything arise from the use of the accommodation that is interfering with airport activities, the lease will be terminated?
We do have some pretty good lease language that, for the most part, gives us all the authority to terminate a lease for any reasons. But, you know, it's a really interesting point as we get into more longer term leases, and the Airbnb thing never occurred because the intention is for this to be a caretaker on site. So I think that's something that we will actually take back and consider adding in just as a clause so that the intention is clear, because of course, on the West Coast, it is a really serious problem. So we might just update our lease, our template language. So that's a really good point. We'll consider that and look at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so given that little concern, should I go ahead and read are we ready for the?
Yeah, if you'd like to go ahead, and then I've got a comment, but we can do that after.
I'd like to move that the West Coast Committee support the preliminary lease application, LBA lease 2024-001 from Jamie Poon, and recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors consider approval of the final application.
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Marilyn. Yeah, just a quick comment before I call vote. Those exact concerns, Beta, were mine as well. And written into the language, as we do in some of our agreements that we have within the district, is that we explicitly say there will be no short-term, no STR uses allowed on that on this particular one. And I was going to see if that was something that could be written into that lease agreement, so it's very clear that we will not be accepting that type of usage on that there. And the other one, the other question I had to staff on this one, particularly, and then on MACO's application as well, it estimates about 80 hours of staff time to accomplish these types of leases, and that's significant. When I saw that, I went, well, that's 8 hours a day. That's 2 weeks of one person full-time work on those. And I just looked at our cost recovery on these types of applications moving forward. And I know those fees that are associated with it is just something I want to flag to staff. If this is, if that's what it's taking to do these, then we absolutely should be, and I know we have, but reviewing those and making either we make the process easier, so it's not taking 80 hours, or we look at ways of recovering those costs to the taxpayer. So, yeah, maybe if you would like to.
Yeah, unfortunately, right now the process is more labor intensive, because there is a sequence of one-offs. If we were to streamline, which you can always streamline leases moving forward, but there would be a master subdivision plan There would be existing servicing power that you have to plug in, plug and play type thing. We're just not at that point of investment, and so it does take that time. There's also with some of these leases, there's also the nuance of where, why, for how long, with whom, dialogue with the nation, because that's still at this point, we do not want to be advancing any leases that Oakwood is not supportive of, and so that takes a significant portion of dialogue to make sure that we run through the applications. So yeah, like right now we're at probably the most labor intensive phase. Over time, as we work on land use plans and we work on MOUs and building that understanding and of how we're going to work together cross organizationally. Over time, we hope to find those efficiencies, but right now it is like it's a case by case, and that's labor intensive.
Great, thank you, Daniel. I assumed some of that, but thank you for clarifying the realities on the ground. I still have to call the question there. Just maybe. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Great, thank you for keeping it. So moving into the next phase of our agenda, we're granting 8 applications with a West Coast focus. I will look over to Heather.
Thank you. So at the February 7th Committee of the Whole meeting, there were 4 grant and aid applications that were referred to the West Coast Committee. So we prepared a report highlighting those 4 applications. And I do just want to identify that in the staff report, I did identify that the District of Ucluelet would be reviewing their grant and aid applications yesterday. And that is not true. They will be reviewing them on March 12th. So we'd like the West Coast Committee to move forward in your recommendations. We will be discussing these further at the Committee of the Whole next week. So I just wanted to highlight that you don't have any information on the District of Ucluelet and what they've done with their grant and aid applications from folks that applied to us and to the district. So there are 4 applications. Maybe I'll just start with the first one, and we would like to do a recommendation for each application separately. So first off, the Redfish Restoration Society, they applied for $15,000. They've identified to me that they've modified their application slightly to be clarify that they're applying for funding to support the Salmon Trail and other programs such as the Sea Star Surveying and Build a Whale and their volunteer programs. And they've identified that the District of Tofino, the District of Ucluelet would benefit from these from this grant and aid. And yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Great, thank you, Heather. And I'll look to the committee for comments on this particular application from Redfish.
I just need to clarify whether Redfish, like I thought they applied to the District of Ucluelet as well, Marilyn, is that correct?
Yes, they have. Our council has heard from all the grant and aid applicants, but we have not made any decisions yet.
So I asked Redfish to clarify that, and they said I can confirm that we're not double dipping for staff time. We are hopeful that the ACRD grant and aid will provide us support for other interpretive programs such as Sea Star Wasting and Build a Whale and our education workshops. So what they have said to me is that they're applying to the regional district for certain programs and to District of Ucluelet for different programs.
If I could just add that, so in the past we have, when they've been different programs, the board has interpreted the policy as if they're considered not double dipping. It is not overly clear in the policy. It is at the discretion of the board. When we've done it and we know that one has already been approved, we will actually ask for a motion that says that you will waive section 2.4, which is the double dipping section of the grant and aid policy. It's a little tricky because we don't know if there's double dipping because District of Ucluelet hasn't completed their process, neither has Tofino. So at this point, if the committee were to want to recommend and proceed with this, then we as staff will pass on that information to District of Ucluelet and District of Tofino, but then it's actually going to be their decision-making process that will determine if they end up doing the double dipping, but it just keeps both the regional district board and the councils fully aware of what's been approved so that there isn't an automatic. So it's not ideal. It's partly because of the timing of how all these grant needs kind of line up together. If you feel like when they're asking for one organization is asking from two, that you feel like that is double dipping, then I recommend that you do not proceed with the grant aid. But it has been done historically in the past.
If I can just add to that as well, because I know for Ucluelet staff and for Tokwat, then pending the decision here, the two treaty nations will also then go back to their councils, I believe, right, with a decision on if and how to contribute. Terry, can you clarify that?
They are welcome to. There is no obligation for them to.
Great, thank you, Terry, for that explanation. I'll look to the rest of the committee if there is any comments or questions, staff. For clarity. Beta, go ahead.
Can I just clarify then? So it's saying that it's benefiting, Ucluelet and the ACRD. So does that mean that a portion of the 15,000 they're requesting is actually going to be from the other two communities?
So how this has been awarded in the past, they were awarded $3,500 in 2022 and $7,500 in 2023. And the three participating areas were Tofino, Ucluelet, and then Area C. And then Tokwat, as part of their process, also allocated $100 to contribute towards that. So to date, grant and aid applications for redfish restoration have been paid by the three West Coast communities.
Yeah. I've got a comment unless Beta you would like to further. Just in general, looking at the grants and aid, I think that it was brought up, Terry, you alluded to that we are going to. I hope the grants and aid policy will be looked at for more clarification and more. What I'd like to say is those guardrails around and parameters for us to be able to make more informed decisions. And the one area that for me, in terms of these particular applications, where we don't really see an itemized budget on many of them. And so to understand what exactly, it's a broad ask for a particular program, but what is involved in the costing of coming up with that fit? Is it just a number that's thrown out? Is there not, what I would like to see in essence is more detail around what those budget requirements are for those requests. In this particular case, the events that they're great events that they were putting on, but as was pointed out early in this whole process, this year was somewhere in the tune of over $500,000 in grants and aids requested for the region at a time when there are some other major cost pressures among the communities. And as much as we want to support, because they're all worthy cause, let's be honest, but we have to be fiscally responsible in many ways. So my suggestion is, and I'll look to the rest of the committee to see if there's support, is in this particular case, there's still some information to come from Ucluelet, but in due process here is to look at certainly a reduction in the requested amount. I look back to the 2022 awarded amount of $3,500. I did not go back to see what, in fact, that was for, and I don't know if that information's here. But keeping in line with the fiscal restraint that I think we need to look the incredible amount that has been asked of this year, I would look at potentially look to the committee to see if they would look to supporting a $3,500 potentially awarded amount to the Redfish Restoration Society.
Thank you. I'm actually, I believe their last request was for 7,500. And so I am totally, I'm very, very supportive of the programming. And I think if we can say we would like to put the $7,500 towards specifically the salmon or the salmon trail and the starfish wasting study, and encourage them to contact Banfield and the University of Victoria, the marine studies, to help support that research. I'm comfortable putting forward the 75.
Great, thank you. And I see a couple of hands over there. Lilana, if you would like to go ahead, and then Marilyn after.
Yeah. So one, I'm having a little bit of hard time hearing some of the last things that were said. So apologize for that, but just want to confirm, was that a confirmation on supporting the whole 3,500 request? Was that the support that you were leaning towards in the end, Director Steer?
Yeah, thank you. But I had mentioned 3,500, and the 22 awarded amount was 3,500. The 2023 awarded amount was 7,500, and the requested amount for 2024 was 15,000. I had suggested the 2022 awarded amount of $3,500 based on not having full recognition of what that amount was awarded to what exact program. But in terms of support, I would like to continue our support of Redfish and the programming there. Director Siga had suggested the 7,500 amount, and I was looking to the rest of the committee. I would be comfortable with the 3,500 amount in terms of the requests that have come in this year, and without an itemized budget around the $15,000 request. I'm just not that comfortable with that large amount. Can you hear now? Does that make yeah?
Yep.
Great.
No, definitely. Thank you. That helps clear that up. Yeah, I also agree with that amount. I've had a couple conversations with the various people, and restructuring kind of some of the applications and taking a closer look at these ones, specifically the societies that have restoration and conservation in their requests. So just really looking at supporting those items that are bringing community members together and have programs offering to the community. I'm not as familiar with the salmon trail, but that sounds in lines, and probably the Build a Whale. I think anything that has to do with sea star surveying or any surveying in general is conservation and stewardship. And that's not necessarily in my idea of a vision of how we support our these applications in the direction that we want them to. So yeah, I can agree with the 3,500, and I think that's all I have to say for right about now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. And Marilyn, go ahead.
Yes, I would support the 3,500. And I did put it in the chat earlier at the meeting, but I do have to leave now because I'm introducing the seniors advocate at the seniors lunch at the community center today. So I apologize, but I have to leave the meeting.
Marilyn, would you be able to just stick around for this vote on this particular one, since we've got you here and you did participate? I can, unless there's further comment from person, I can follow. If you want to just read it out there, that'd be great.
You want me to read it out?
Sure. Well, I thought you might have had it right in front of you. Go ahead. Yeah.
I move that the West Coast Committee recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors award a grant and aid in the amount of 3,500 in 2024 to the Redfish Society, with the following areas participating. I don't know what's supposed to be in there.
It would be Tofino, Ucluelet, Area C, and Tilcourt has the option, I believe.
With the following areas participating.
Sorry, I will send an updated list to both of what, and you do that after the meeting, and they can go from there with their process.
With the following areas participating: Tofino, Ucluelet, Area C, and Tilcourt if they wish.
Great, seconded Director Siga. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Marilyn. Yeah, I was hoping to get back as I was going to be at the Seniors Advocate in Tofino, which is at 3:30, but I don't think that's going to be possible. Thanks a lot, Marilyn. Take care. So moving on to the next one, Heather, thank you.
Yep. So the next one is the Surfrider Foundation. They've applied to the regional district for $5,000 to support two programs, Hold On to Your Butt and Ocean Friendly Business. They've identified the District of Tofino, the District of Ucluelet, and the City of Port Alberni as areas that will receive benefit from this grant and aid. I do recall part of the discussion at the Committee of the Whole being that the city wasn't overly supportive of this grant and aid at this point. So if the directors are interested in adding the City of Port Alberni as a participant, we would need to bring that back to the Committee of the Whole meeting next week. And I will leave it there.
Great, thank you, Heather. I'll look to the board, or to the committee, sorry, if there's any comments or questions on this particular one. Right, Rita, go ahead.
Perhaps we should bring it to the Committee of the Whole.
I do have a comment. I mean, listening to the conversations from the City of Port Alberni and looking at what this program supports, I recognize they want to spread the love out to a variety of organizations. I would concur with Port Alberni in terms of this participation in this particular one. I'm comfortable making a decision right now with excluding Port Alberni in that, in conversations with the directors from Port Alberni. There was some, just in terms of their contributions to all of many of the grants and aids. So this one was, it was hard for them to slot it in to the benefits that they could see directly for the City of Port Alberni, which I fully understood. They have a relationship with Surfrider as well, and I'm not sure through their grants and aid program, Port Alberni has contributed to them in another way. But I'm certainly comfortable with dealing with it here with the West Coast Committee and our recommendation to the board. Once again, I would look at the amount that would be there, and I might look to the committee to see. I would suggest once again a reduction in the requested amount for the program. Once again, it's hard when you don't have a budget associated with the request to understand exactly what the money would be applied to. But it's a great organization. We support them. They've done incredible work in our region. And I know these specific programs that they're referring to, they are valuable programs within our region. And I would look to the committee. I would suggest a $2,500 award, and I would look to the committee if there's any comment around the amount and if they would like to see that adjusted. But I would suggest a $2,500 amount.
Yeah, that's emotional. Second it.
I'll look to the rest of the committee if there's that will be a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any comments on the motion? I don't see any hands coming up. Levant, go ahead. There you go.
Right. This is going towards to support the PACRIM Take Back the Tap program. And you were saying that we haven't received a full understanding of what that is.
Just to clarify, Lavana, so they have applied to the District of Ucluelet to apply for the Pacific Rim Take Back the Tap program. For our application today, we're looking at Hold On to Your Butt and Ocean Friendly Business as what they applied for here.
Okay.
Yeah, Levant, those two programs I'm familiar with, and they're well supported within our communities, and they do great work on those two particular items there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Just for clarification, the contributing was once again to Tofino, Ucluelet, Area C. And I don't know on this one because there was nothing, or did I miss it? Is TOCOR just automatically included in that conversation, or?
Yeah, so basically, to the 4 treaty nations, I just send out the entire grant and aid package and I indicate who, like what members are participating in each. And so that they have hopefully all the information they need, or they can reach out if they don't.
Great, thank you, Terry. And I just look up to Kirsten there. If there was any comments around that, please jump in at any time. Thanks. Okay, that motion was carried. Yes, thank you. Moving on to the next grant. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So the next one is the Tofino Community Food Society. So they've applied to our program for $5,600 to support their Growing West Coast Gardeners program by offsetting costs for participants and by offering scholarships, as well as to support their Grow Local program, which is growing, seed saving, and food preservation workshops. The participants would be District of Tofino, Ucluelet, and the Area C as receiving benefit. And they did not apply to the District of Ucluelet for a grant.
Great. I can look to the committee if there's any. I can't comment, but Data, go ahead.
We've also got the CBT, and there's a garden that was initially supported by Ucluelet out at the junction. So I'm wondering if that's still in existence, and that will definitely make a difference as to how I see this application.
I can't speak to that.
Go ahead, Leva.
The community garden over at the Y, that's kind of managed through volunteer through Ucluelet, and I'm not too sure about its partners, which might that is a continued community program that continues to happen, and if that helps answer your question, Nicole.
If I could get some clarification on that, because I am in support of it, if these two are connected and somehow connected to CBT. But if this is mostly a Tofino-driven thing, then I think, we need a balance.
I could get more information on that from our Lands and Resources Department, probably within the next day or two. So, if that helps.
Well, and if you could pass that along, that would be great. I'm also thinking Amy Needham, who's our sustainability planner and is kind of the West Coast agricultural resource roundtable, might have some information for us. So we can gather this information and bring it back to next week's committee of the whole with the additional info.
Thank you so much. I'd really appreciate it, because this is a significant amount of money, and if it's going just to a very small contribution to food sustainability on the West Coast, I think we have to look at the big picture.
Yeah, thank you, Veda. I appreciate those comments for sure. The program itself and what I'm familiar with the applicants and community food security, and there is and you're right. I would like a little more clarification. And once again, we can always adjust the amount, but I will speak strongly in support of it. It is very important in terms of the regional food security issue, and certainly on the West Coast. We know there are many challenges when we have road closures and all the other potential events that could happen. So it would be good to get clarification, but I'm very highly supportive of the application based on that major component. I do know it provides a larger food security question for the West Coast regions. Thank you.
And what amount were you thinking?
Well, once again, it's very difficult without broken record without having an itemized budget about what it would go to. Once again, I'm going to, and I hate doing this, but it would be literally looking at all of them and cutting them in half as an appropriate number. If there is further information, that may adjust kind of the amount in my head, but that's what I was kind of looking at was at this point in time, it would be 2,800 would be the amount that I was going to suggest. But if until we get that clarification, we can then bring it back. It will come to the committee of the whole and be able to have that further information to help us make that final decision.
Thank you, and I look forward to Amy speaking to us. Thanks.
Okay, the next one is the West Coast Community Resources Society. So they've applied for a $10,000 grant to support the setting up of the Yuki Reuse It store by renting the space, hiring a supervisor and marketing. District of Tofino, Ucluelet, and Area C would be the beneficiaries. They've also applied to the District of Ucluelet Grant and Aid Program, but that is for in-kind donations of facility rentals. And I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you, Heather. I'll look to the committee, of course, once again. Comments? Beta, I see you grimacing, but I know you want to comment, so please, it's valuable.
Having dealt with free stores and donations before, I realize it can become overwhelming. And there's a lot of shuffling to the landfill. So I'm concerned.
Yeah, I know the concept and the idea, we've had variations of it in Tofino. I think there's great value of it. What I will look to is we're also in the process of solid waste management, looking towards our long-term plan there. It is, in the most recent meeting and conversations, or in terms of our visioning process around the plan, that certainly reuse of stores were part of those conversations, and looking at some of the issues that are that do come up with them. There was, I think, a general support for the concept in terms of from a waste reduction standpoint, and just an overall good thing to do. There were examples of in other communities such as Hornby Island, where very successful reuse it stores there. I would be supportive once again, I'll be looking at a substantial reduction in the requested amount, but I think it has value. I'm just, my timing would be the one that I'd be most interested in, because I'd like to see a little more information through our solid waste management advisory committee in terms of information around there to help further support this. So I don't know if this was going to be looking for the 2024 year to have this set up and going. I didn't see that in the information that we were given. So I'd be hesitant for a full $10,000 amount this year. Once again, without an itemized budget around what that $10,000 would be sent for. I would be comfortable maybe because I know that there are administrative costs and the work that would need to be done to get this concept up and moving. The West Coast Community Resource Center Society is a valuable society within our West Coast community. They do incredible work, and this is just another piece of that. And I certainly know from a support network that it would be a valuable service within our community. So I'd be comfortable at this time, in looking at an amount of $5,000. But that being said, I would look to the committee to see if there was any further comment on that. Accepting Veda, I certainly know exactly what you're talking about in terms of those types of facilities.
And if that's a motion, again, I'll support it as a second.
Great, thank you. So that will be a motion. And in terms of those that would be participating, because this is the first year, there are no prior year participants on it. I would look to I suspect it would be Tofino, Ucluelet, Area C, and once again to the Treaty Nations into the area to see if there would be a contribution forwarded from there. Does that sound about right to the committee? Great, thank you. So that I will call the question then on the amount of $5,000 with the participant areas. Heather shake her head, she's got that under control. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. I think, is that it? Granted aid, West Coast Focus, there we are. That was the last one I have on there. Excellent. Great. So we can move down on to the remainder of the agenda here. So it's on reports. I'm looking on my online participants, and I do not see any of our ex officio members on here. They were Parks spoke just last week, I believe, about 7 days ago. I don't see any on there. I'll look to Heather to see if I'm missing anything. So I suspect we, I don't even know if we have to receive the verbal reports, because if there is none, we don't have to receive them. So that was easy. So there is no late business. I will look quickly to see if there is any questions. I have a sneaky suspicion there are none, but I'll look to Heather.
No questions.
suspicion confirmed. So we can move on to an adjournment. And my understanding is we don't even need a motion as chair. I can just say meeting adjourned at whatever time we are, 11:59. Look at that. Wow. 12 o'clock. Let's call it 12 right on the button there. Holy gee. So thank you everyone on Zoom land. Appreciate your participation once again. Take care. And I'll see you guys in an hour and a half. Yes. 1:30, I believe is our meeting.